I found in meeting Dr. King that he had the 3 A's. He was available, he was accessible, and he was accountable. And when he went to help the garbage collectors there in Memphis, his last request was for Ben Branch to play Precious Lord, Take My Hand. He leaned over the banister. If I could sing and Cleo could come up here and play, she's shaking her head no, so. But I would sing to you, Precious Lord, Take My Hand. And more than anything else, if I would leave with you, I would leave that thought to you, to ask God to take your hand and to lead you, because you don't know where you're going. You don't know what's going to happen in life. But as my father would say, anybody can fall, but nobody has to wallow. Yes, racism was alive. We lived in an integrated neighborhood. Yes, I've been called nigger. Even as an adult, I've been called nigger. When I started working in public housing, and I just said, hello. He said, hello, nigger. I said, hello. And kept on walking. I remember when we integrated the housing development in Barberton, and my boss wanted me to go out and talk to them, and he said he couldn't go. And I said, okay, I will go, but I want a policeman to go with me. He said, well, do you want him to pick you up? I said, no, I'm not going to ride with him. I don't want him thinking I'm trying to go with him or something. Just have him come and just have him stay in the parking lot so he watches my car. And when I got in, the room was packed, and there was a very hostile man sitting on the front row with his hands crossed and his legs, and the meanest look you ever want to see. And so I said to him, my name is Dorothy O. I work for Metropolitan Housing, and I'm new, and we have programs, and we have money for programs. We're going to have daycare for your children, and we're going to have lunch programs, and I just ran down the list of all that we were going to do. But I read your sign, because the sign said no niggers and no dogs allowed. And I said, I just came to tell you, if you want me, I'm happy to come, and I will come and help you do everything that we've done every place else. But if you don't want me, I won't be back. But I guess I should tell you no one else will either. One lady way in the back waved her hand and said, I'll work with you. She broke the ice because several did. That man didn't. He walked out. But Barberton is now an integrated housing development. But had I been so stupid to say, I'm not going, no, I was going. Because if you sweep the floor, sweep it like Beethoven. But if you have a boss, you may disagree with him. If Mayor Plisquelic or Tom Sawyer were here, they would tell you when they first hired me, I went in and said, I will do whatever you want me to do. And if you and I disagree, I will tell you why I disagree, and I will tell you why. But if you say, this is what I want, when I walk out your door, I will give you 100%. You will believe that your idea was mine, because I'm going to do just what you tell me to do. Young people, if you are working and your boss tells you to do this, don't go back and give him mouth to say what you're not going to do, or that's not my job. It became your job when your boss asked you to do it. And so give them 100%, because they are the one that will be responsible. Parents, don't squash your children's dreams. And young people, when you run into racism, yes, I'm sorry to say it is still alive. But when you do, just take it as that was that person and do what you can. Yes, I wish I didn't have to tell you that racism is still alive, but it is. It is. And once upon a time, we were called colored, and we were called nigger, and we were called black, and many other names. But Dr. King came along and fought for whoever was called any other name. And we celebrate that man, and we celebrate that man's dream. For 5 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light, of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flame of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of captivity. But 100 years later, we must face the tragic fact that the Negro is still not free. That's what Dr. King said when he was on the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. on August 28, 1963. And the University of Akron went in the archives and found me the article, "We Shall Overcome Race Bars," King tells the rally in Akron, Ohio. And that's when I had the opportunity to meet him. And that's when I realized that if you sweep the floor, sweep it like Beethoven. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are or what you are somebody. And God's delays are not God's denials. So maybe if you don't get it now, he must have something better for you. Or he must be preparing you so you'll be ready to step into that spot. Well, I understand that you might have some questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. And I don't know who's getting the questions, Carla? So if you have a question that you want to ask me, you can give David a card and he will bring it up. And if I can't answer it, I will tell you. Or if I don't want to answer it, I will tell my sister Annie to answer it.
Okay, Dorothy, we do have some questions here, so I'll ask them from over here.
Okay.
How has Dr. King's philosophy shaped your approach to leadership in your career?
He was a servant leader, and I hope that's what I am. You can find me taking off my jacket and rolling up my sleeves and washing dishes or sweeping the floor or cleaning the floor, whatever. You can find me in any of the hospitals. The parking attendants know me because I go so much. Sometimes I just wave because if somebody's sick and I know about it, I'm going to go. And if I can't go, I'm going to pray. And I'm going to call my prayer partners and ask them to join in. So the fact that he was a servant leader, that's what I hope that I am.
You've spoken about this to some degree, but this person wants to know, how do you think race relations have changed over the years?
They have changed. If they had not changed, we wouldn't have these black councilmen sitting here. We wouldn't have a black president getting his second term today where I wanted to be, but nobody gave me a ticket, so I couldn't have gone anyway. So I'm here because you invited me. They sent me notices that it was happening, but I had the privilege of going last time, and what a wonderful time it was for us. And I would ask you all to join with me in prayer for our president and for his cabinet and for our congressmen and for our senators, that we might live in a quiet and peaceable land. They need it.
Dorothy, someone would like to know when and how did you learn to sign, and what sparked your interest in that?
I worked at Goodwill Industries. I was hired for 3 months because I had taken a typing test and I had 40 words a minute and 10 errors. And so they said, "We have a job for you. We're going to send you to Goodwill." Well, I was highly insulted because we had some clothes from Goodwill. I didn't know what Goodwill was. I didn't want to go with those clothes that people gave, that my mother bought. But my sister Annie, who was already a secretary, said, "Oh, Dodo, just go and get their experience, and then you can quit." But when I went in, the boss just told me I was hired for 3 months. And so I took the job, and my boss had 5 ribs removed and 1 lung, and she was very frail. Her name was Florence Pollock, and she was the public relations director. I was her secretary. And when she would be sick so often, I would go to her house and take notes. And we became the walking, talking team because she had the brain and could do it, and I had the strength, and I could do what she wanted done. And so when she became so frail, they were going to move to Arizona, her family, so that she would be in better weather. But while she was living and I was going to her house, they would offer me her job. I don't want her job. I can't do her job. I know how to do my job. I don't want her job. And so when she left, they took me at my word. They didn't give me her job. They gave the job to somebody else who had a master's degree, and I only had high school. And I think he felt maybe a little threatened, and so he didn't let me do all the things that I had been so used to doing. It's like he drew a circle to shut me out, a heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But Love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. We are still friends to this day. But while there, I saw 35 deaf people and no one to interpret for them. And we had a daily chapel service, which was my job to introduce the speaker. And then I would go stand at the back so I could help them with wheelchairs or help them with crutches. 2 deaf came to chapel every day and worked their rosary. I have a rosary at home that they gave me. And they would just pray, and I would pray for a year. God, I wish I could tell them a part of what they're missing. Oh, God, some speakers were so good. I just wish I could. With a Catholic priest, Father John Wilson, brought a deaf girl in to apply for a job, and a Catholic girl came over and said, he's a priest way across the room. I said, I don't know, he looks like one. He walked away, and she yelled. He yelled, Dorothy, come here. And I went over. I was so embarrassed. He said, sure, I'm a priest. I'm Father Wilson. And he shook out my hand. And I said, how did you know? He said, I read your lips. I'm chaplain for Akron and Cleveland deaf. I said, have you been here? He said, no. I said, come on. I said, he's deaf, she's deaf. And he would sign, and I said, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. He said, do you mean that? I said, yes, I do. He said, if you mean it, I want you to give up 1 lunch hour a week, and I'm going to come, and I'm going to teach you. And well, then you have to ask my boss. So I took him in and told my boss. She said, will you teach us all? About 35 of us did. And he would come, and every week when he came, I was the only one that could raise my hand because I was the only one that had studied. And he would say, I'm not even coming back because Dorothy's going to be your teacher. Without my knowledge, they applied to Gallaudet College for orientation to deafness. It was 4 hours to a master's degree. And I had a high school education. And a girl said to my boss, said, can you go away for 4 weeks? I said, no, I made $25 a week. I had no vacation time. I paid $1 a day for a babysitter. And she talked about go for 4 weeks. I couldn't go for 4 days and take off work. And so I went to my boss when I heard Polly say congratulations. She said, never mind, you told me you couldn't do it. I said, couldn't do what? She said, we got you a scholarship at Gallaudet. I said, I can go. Oh, I can go. And so I went to my babysitter and I said, I have a chance to go to learn sign language, and I'll be gone 4 weeks, and I won't have any money to pay you, but could you just keep Renee? And she said, oh, yes, we'll keep her. And so I went to my sister that we lived together, and I said, Sil, I have a chance to go to Gallaudet to learn sign language. Will you take Renee every day and pick her up? Yeah, sure. And then I went to my church and told them, and I said, could you please pray that they don't give me a test? Because if they give me a test, I cannot pass it. But if they don't give me a test, I can do it. And so I would go to the deaf, and I said, I'm going to Gallaudet. I'm going to learn to talk for you. My boss would call me in, honey, you don't know the language. You're going for an orientation. You're not learning a language in 4 weeks. I'm going to Gallaudet. I'm going to learn to talk for you. She could not stop me from telling them that. And when I went, I would come back and study every night. Everybody else in the class was working towards their master's but me, and they were from all over. When the professor could not give me my test, that was a prayer that I asked the church, please don't let him give me the test until I'm there. When I was there 2 weeks, I remember Professor Phillips, as I sat on the stool, and he shook his head. He said, I don't believe you. According to this test, you're not to be able to learn sign language, and I am watching you do it every day. And so 4 weeks later, I came home, and I knew 700 words. I talked in chapel. I signed and spoke. I said to the hearing, I've been to Gallaudet, and I have learned this is a sign for sign, this is a sign for sin. To the hearing, I was saying I learned to sign. To the deaf, I was saying I learned to sin, and their eyes are like this. Well, the only thing I knew is that the deaf didn't know what I said, and the hearing didn't know what I signed. So, yep, I still make mistakes, but I still sign.
Can you talk about your views on racial and gender progress in Akron going back to from your time as the deputy mayor?
Oh, it's been a great change. My son-in-law is white. My daughter is black. And I have many friends that also have gender problems, but they're my friends. That's their life. It is not my life. But I have very dear friends.
Someone also would like to know how you became deputy mayor of Akron.
God. I worked in public housing. I didn't live in Akron. I didn't vote for the mayor. I didn't work on his campaign. But my mother and father always voted. By the way, my father was a Republican, my mother was a Democrat, and they loved each other. They got along. They didn't tell us what to do as to what party we should or should not belong to. They just looked at people and loved them as people and loved them as friends and as neighbors. And so politics led me to politics. The political party changed in public housing, and the top people were being fired. And they were down to me. Everybody was gone but me. I guess they weren't quite sure, because I had a lot of friends in all that public housing. They didn't want any uprising. And so, not that I would have started it, but couldn't say I wouldn't have appreciated it. But 6 hours before I was to be fired, I cleaned out my office that night before, and I had been called by Dave Meeker to tell me that Tom Sawyer was going to hire the first 2 blacks, and why didn't I apply? And he sent me the application, and I put it in my purse because I said, I can't do that job. I'm not applying for a job I can't do. I cannot do that. And so he kept calling, and to the last day, before you had to have the application in, I had gone to my pastor, Pastor Fowler, urgent. He left a meeting and came to meet with me, and he said so fatherly, Dot, what is it? And I said, well, Pastor, they asked me to apply for deputy mayor, and I can't do that job. He said, I'm glad you think you can't do it. I would hate to think that you think you're so good that you can just walk in there and do it. But I want to ask you one question. I said, what? He said, if you get this job, do you think you can help more people? I said, oh, yes. He said, then on that basis, apply, and we're going to pray. He laid his hand on my shoulder and left and went back to his meeting, and I walked to the car, and I said, I don't care what he said. I can't do the job. I'm not applying. And when I got a call from a well-meaning, very dear friend to say, Tom Sawyer's going to hire his first 2 blacks. I said, oh, yeah, I know. I'm applying for the job. And the reply was, this is our first 2, and you don't know anything about politics. And he named people that did know. And I said, oh, thank you so much. And I whipped out my drawer and said, I don't care what he said. They might have the degree, but I know how to do it. Blah, 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 blah. And I called my friend, Jackie Williams, and she came up. I said, Jackie, can I trust you? She said, oh, yes, Mrs. Jackson, you can trust me. I said, no. Can I really trust you? She said, yes, you can trust me. I said, okay, I'm applying for a job. Would you take my application down to Tom Sawyer's office? I can send you because you work for me, but I can't go. I can't leave work and go in that office. She said, sure, I'll take it. And she took it, and she didn't tell. And the first call I got was that night saying, I've had the hardest 2 weeks of my life, but I've made my decision. I want you for my deputy mayor. And I'm being fired tomorrow. He said, you're what? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll appoint you tomorrow, and you won't be able to be fired. And so Jackie and Sandra Roebuck went back, and we packed my office, and the next morning the paper said, Tom Sawyer appoints black woman. So 19 and a half years later, I left because I was old. I'll be 80. This will be my 80th year.
Well, that's a good segue to this question. What advice would you give to young people trying to find work in Akron?
I would say go to school. Stay in school. Yes, God has opened doors to move me on, but I didn't stay out of school because I didn't think I needed it. There's so much more that you can learn in school, and you need it. And when the job description says you need a bachelor's, you need a master's, you need a PhD, that's what they mean, because they need somebody that's already at that level that can do it. There are many jobs that I may know how to do, and there are many, many more that I don't know how to do because I don't have the knowledge to know how to do it. Young people, stay in school. The good thing about Akron is they will make a way for you if you want to go. The dollars will come, but you don't need D's and C's. You're not a D student. Put the extra time in. They are not looking. I don't know how it is now, but when I graduated, all my grades were on a sheet about this size. Your attendance is important. If you're supposed to be at school, be at school. If you're supposed to be at work, be at work. And you're not supposed to leave a half hour early or 15 minutes early or my mother needs this or my brother. No. You get to school. And parents, you let your children be in school and give them a breakfast before they leave, not a Hostess Twinkie. You'll rise them quick and drop them low. But I'm glad that the schools in many places are providing meals now and providing food because you need to eat. You don't need a Hostess Twinkie. It's not going to carry you through the day. It's going to take you to a peak and drop you.
We got a couple more questions. How do you keep forgiving prejudice in our society? What's your secret to continue to have a spirit of forgiveness?
Pray, because I still mess up. And I have to go and ask God to forgive me. And if I want to be forgiven, then I have to forgive. That's the example that he set before us, that you have to forgive. Acid does more to the vessel it's stored than the vessel it's poured, so why are you going to keep that stuff inside of you? It's going to destroy you and not do a thing to the other person.
Our last question, Dorothy, is tell us about your pound cake.
If you don't want to gain weight, don't eat it. I love to eat. You can look at me. I love to feed people. I love to cook. I love it. And they seem to like my pound cake.
Okay, how about a round of applause for Dorothy Jackson? Thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Well, thank you once again, Dorothy, for a wonderful talk. Thanks to Alpha Phi Alpha again for your support. And thank you all for coming here today. Have a great afternoon. If you'd like to talk to Dorothy afterwards, she's going to go over here right next to the auditorium. Have a great day.